Now, I know the Americans don't have royalty. Why should they? They kicked it out by revolutionary means. But if they did, this young man would definitely be the crown prince. Jackson Hinkle, US-based political analyst and host of the wonderful Legitimate Targets. Speaking of legitimate targets, Jackson, someone tried to kill Donald Trump again this afternoon at Mar-a-Lago. He wasn't there, but it's a sign of the rising temperature in the United States, isn't it?
Well, thanks for having me on again, George. Frankly, I don't believe anything that comes out of the mainstream media anymore. I don't know what to make of it. Could it have happened? I mean, possibly. Someone was surely arrested. Someone came into the property. But really, it all seems like a giant psyop now. What's not a giant psyop is that, there was a group of people who were discussing the idea of going to visit Iran recently. I was among them, and there were tangible threats against that group of people who were considering to make a trek there as a last-ditch effort to try and stop war against Iran, a war that's surely going to bring about the loss of life of thousands of American troops if they do decide to try and enter Iran. So those are the real threats. And obviously, there's a target on your back and Max Blumenthal's back as well. Anyone who tells the truth. Trump, I think he's safeguarded by Miriam Adelson. I think he's safeguarded by Peter Thiel and all the rest of the Zionist genocidal freaks that control the apparatus in the United States today.
Yeah, but our friend Tucker, who wreaked such devastation on the cause of Christian Zionism, on the cause of the Israel lobby, and let's face it, on the cause of the current administration, with the simple act of being a journalist this week by interviewing Mike Huckabee to such devastating effect. It was amazing. Just ordinary, honest journalism impacted like a nuclear device.
And even before, as you know, he did that interview, he said that Netanyahu had personally attacked the safety of two of his family members prior to even going to Israel. So that's how serious of a threat it is when Americans and citizens of the UK and other Western nations are speaking out against our own governments and the crimes that they're committing. Tucker, you'd think someone like him is untouchable, given how close he is still, I guess, as a maybe a friend. I don't know what you can call an acquaintance of the president of the United States. Surely a man with very, very high ratings in regard to the American public. The American public love him, so Trump probably wants to try and keep him in his good graces. But even that's not enough, because he goes to Israel. He can't even set foot in the country outside of the airport because they had all these machinations, these plans. They were going to stage all these Hasbara PSYOP campaigns around him setting one single foot into the country. And that's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is he wouldn't actually make it back out of the country. And that's a very plausible scenario that could have taken place as well. But that interview was, I think Mike Huckabee's, the ambassador's Twitter account, speaks for itself in the days after the interview. I mean, he's senselessly tweeting out multi-page essays that he concocted through some sort of Ben Shapiro, Hasbara, ChatGPT, AI chatbot. And he's just losing his mind, all because it was exposed in 4K exactly what the Christian Zionists, the evangelical Zionists in America really think about Zionism.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just that they're wrong, is it, Jackson? It's that they're unbelievably stupid. I mean, the thesis that all this land, not just Israel plus Palestine occupied in 67, but an Israel that stretches from the River Nile to the Euphrates River in Iraq, taking all of Jordan, taking Lebanon, taking part of Saudi Arabia and all of Iraq, that this country is this is the sacred cause of a whole tranche of American politicians and policymakers. And as I saw someone from the Dakota tribe of the original Americans make the point, why are we giving billions to Israel for infrastructure when the Dakota people, the original owners of the land, don't even have drinkable water? The extent of the occupation of American political life by these evangelical idiots like Huckabee and their controllers in Israel is truly staggering, isn't it?
It's important to remember 870 days ago, we were all sold the lie 40 beheaded babies, this, that, and the third. Somehow, a group of riflemen on paragliders caused thousands of automobiles in Israel to have become impaled. Their roofs are caved in. They're all burnt out. I don't know how that magically happens by a group of paragliders, but they wanted us to believe that. There's been no evidence of any of those claims and who they allege to have carried them out since that took place on October 7th, 2023. And at the time, there were some people saying, wow, Israel is going to really rain hell down upon who they are blaming for this. We all know that now. And this could spiral into a giant conflict in the Middle East. We were called crazy conspiracy theorists, even anti-Semitic, for saying that simple fact. I think people were even making fun of Scott Ritter when he said that back then, this could turn into a major regional war with Iran. But 870 days later, we are there. And as you pointed out, the only thing that we have to be thankful for right now is that our enemies are as stupid as they are. Because at this point in time, as we've witnessed all of this, we've witnessed all these lies, you have people on all sides of the political spectrum in the United States who now hold the same exact positions on these issues. They're all coming around to where you and I and Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal and Tucker Carlson have been on these issues for some time. And now that we all agree on these sets of issues, what comes next? I think the obvious conclusion is that there must be an anti-Epstein coalition of political parties, political figures that don't join necessarily in one giant party that agrees on everything, but we definitely know what needs to come to an end, and that's the endless support for Israel. That's American and British imperialism, and that's a huge threat. So I say thank you to our enemies for being as stupid as you are, because you've really woken a lot of people up.
They sure have, and I never thought I'd live to see this day when a clear majority of the American people disapprove of America's relationship to Israel. Moving back to the war, John Kiriakou, a man well worthy of respect, CIA whistleblower, man who served time in a penitentiary for telling us the truth about his former employers. He says it's Monday or Tuesday. Max Blumenthal, in an interview just a few minutes ago, made a very sound case for why it has to happen soon and quick so that it's all over, they hope, by the time people start arriving for the FIFA World Cup. It kind of has to be now. Is it going to be, in your view?
It doesn't matter when it happens. If they try to do anything that's going to be shock and awe level destruction, they're going to get dragged into this by, the next time America would be considered for hosting the FIFA World Cup. This is not going to be a quick operation. Maybe they tried to do something that's, very artificial, maybe just for the red meats that Trump must offer the Zionist donor base. But I don't even know if that's possible at this point. The Iranians have been very clear, and a lot of Iranians, like conservative lawmaker, principlist lawmaker, Dr. Amir Hossein Sabiti, he was the campaign manager for the runner-up, Saeed Jalili, in the last presidential elections. They're saying, why are we even negotiating? These are what Iranian patriots, hardcore guys, are saying. Why are we even negotiating right now? They're talking about preemptive strikes. They're saying, look at Venezuela. How did waiting around work for Venezuela? Meanwhile, if there were warships off of North Korea's coast, does anyone think that North Korea would wait around and see what happens? No, of course not. So Trump is backed into a very, very dark corner. I can't imagine what is going through his mind right now. I'm sure he would love an off-ramp, but it does appear as though we're about to see something big. We haven't had this many U.S. military assets in the region since, I guess, 2003. 1/5 of all U.S. Air Force fifth-generation fighter jets are in the region. All of the top-level air defense that didn't seem to work too well in the 12-day war are at every single base there. And also we have 2/3 of the U.S. Navy either there or very soon to be there. It's en route right now, the USS Gerald R. Ford, which is the most powerful carrier strike group that the U.S. has to offer. But those can sink just like any other ship on the face of the planet. And the Iranians have been very clear to point that out.
Well, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And they seem to be, if I can use a George W. Bushism, misunderestimating Iran's resolve and its capacity. One hypersonic missile, which is undefendable against, landing in the middle of one of those aircraft carriers, could sink billions of dollars worth, and more importantly, hundreds, maybe thousands of American sailors. Is the American public not concerned about that?
Well, it's worth noting that the majority of the American public is opposed to war against Iran, not at the high numbers we saw in opposition to war on Venezuela, but they're still opposed to war against Iran. I mean, you just have to spend 5 minutes in America to know that even our most prestigious so-called American cities are all falling apart. As you mentioned, people don't have access to either electricity, water in some parts of America still. Our cities, the infrastructure is falling apart, trains crashing, planes falling out of the sky. Our ships, not even our warships, just our cargo ships are crashing into one another, crashing into bridges. I mean, now would be the time to say, hey, China is beating us basically everywhere across the world. Their economy is about 5-6 trillion larger than ours when you account for GDP purchasing power parity. They're the number one import-export trade partner for many nations across the world. And they've done all of this in the past, 2 decades or so. Maybe we should focus on actually rebuilding America rather than building a bunch of coffins and body bags that are going to be storing the corpses of U.S. soldiers that were potentially lucky enough to bring back home. The truth and reality is most of them are either going to be buried in Iran or they're going to be sinking to the bottom of the ocean. God forbid that happens. God forbid we get to that point. But that is a sincere possibility here.
Now, for obvious reasons, I'm the last man to give 3 cheers to the British police. But I'll give them 2 cheers for marching into a royal castle and carting off the former Duke of York, who had 10,000 men once upon a time, but is now friendless. The Duke of York, as was the Andrew formerly known as Prince, was held in a police cell for 12 hours and questioned about his relationship to Jeffrey Epstein. The former Prime Minister of Norway is under arrest and in custody for corrupt practices while in office relating to Jeffrey Epstein. The queens and princes of multiple European countries are being disgraced, and top officials of various international organizations are having to hand in their resignations. When can we expect to see some heads rolling in the United States over the Epstein affair?
Well, I almost wonder if maybe everyone just hated Prince Andrew at these island parties that they were throwing with the jerky and whatnot. And maybe they said, look, someone has to take the fall. It's going to be him. We didn't like him anyways. Maybe that's a little bit of what's going on right now, because as you mentioned, there's not even a peep about that happening in the United States for much of anyone. When you look at this Epstein class, this Epstein regime, obviously this is a distinct political class. This is an economic class, and it sounds really disgusting and gross, but they are going to defend their interests, as you know, just in the same way that workers should be defending their interests, right? The bottom line of the Epstein regime is to make sure that none of them go to prison for eating human beings and trafficking underage people all across the world. That it's just disgusting. It's demonic, but that is their end goal. And they're doing a pretty good job of it. I mean, nothing is being discussed. No one is being outed. They're still saying that this was the final batch of files that they had to release. But a few weeks ago, Pam Bondi said that there was 6 million files that had yet to be released. So where are the 2-3 million remaining files, and what's in those? Whose names are in those? I can't imagine it's a pretty picture for Lutnick or for Donald Trump or for any of their friends. But like I said, they're going to pull out every single trick in the book to try and protect each other. And frankly, I don't even believe at all that body that the autopsy was done unto was Epstein's body. The ears don't match. The nose doesn't match. Ghislaine Maxwell, she looks like the new photos of her from prison. She looks like one of those like Iranian monarchist lesbians that you see walking around Orange County, California. It doesn't look like Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of British royalty or business royalty. It's just, I don't buy any of it. It's all fake.
Well, I mean, once upon a time, that would have sounded like a crazy thing to say. But as I pointed out last week, the person who appeared before the Congressional Committee by camera was definitely not Ghislaine Maxwell. I know Ghislaine Maxwell. And however much prison pasta can put on the pounds, it can't change the gap between your eyes. It can't change the shape of your nose. That was not Ghislaine Maxwell. So if that's not Ghislaine Maxwell in the prison, why should we believe that Jeffrey Epstein died in the prison? The two of them might be together on an island somewhere, perhaps.
Perhaps indeed. And maybe, it's not all that nice of an island. So Trump now has to launch some sort of a war against Cuba. And then they'll get like a way bigger Little St. James Island, and they'll turn Cuba back into this trafficking ring with prostitution running rampant, and American billionaires having the opportunity to buy luxury homes for pennies on the dollar and basically have a slave class that serves to their every need. I think that's what they want for Cuba. That's probably the goal.
Yeah, half the year they can spend in Gaza, the other half in Cuba, having turned both of them into bordellos and casinos and condominiums. But they're all caught lying through their teeth. Bill Gates I just looked at an interview he gave in 2019. He scarcely knew Jeffrey Epstein. But this latest tranche shows that he had years and years and years of the closest possible business and personal relationship. Howard Lutnick said that he cut ties with Jeffrey Epstein in 2005 after his conviction. But he was visiting him on the island more than a decade later, and also deeply involved in business relations with Epstein throughout, conviction or no conviction. And he's still in your government. He's the Commerce Secretary.
Well, yes. And as you know, when we have people on our shows, even for a 15-minute conversation, we do our due diligence. We make sure that, maybe a person was suggested to us. We check them out. We look online. We try to get an understanding of who this person is that we're going to invite on our program. I'd have to imagine that if you're doing multi-$100,000 deals or $1 million plus deals with a random guy, you'd be doing your due diligence. And that's why I was so disgusted, specifically the names you mentioned. Of course, there's plenty of reasons to be disgusted by Bill Gates and Howard Lutnick and all the things that they've done. Most recently of which this whole tariff scheme that Lutnick is going to be making billions and billions of dollars off of. But even more so, people like Noam Chomsky, who champion themselves as the upper echelon of moral clarity, and really, what is he? He's a guy who behind the scenes was knowingly palling around with Jeffrey Epstein. Him and his wife were, and they were saying that, Jeffrey, you're our favorite person, you're our best friend, you're our favorite person in the world. Those new emails from Chomsky's wife showed that this week. And they were moving a lot of money for the Chomskys, Epstein was. And also, he was meeting with Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak and Chomsky, they're all meeting together while Chomsky was telling all of us on the outside that, yes, sure, the situation in Gaza is very sad, but you all need to stop the boycott, divest, sanction movement because it's not going to get you anywhere. So now we understand why he had these weird political views, these backward political views. Same thing when Jimmy Dore was fighting for Medicare for all, universal health care in the United States at the start of the pandemic. And Noam Chomsky told all of us when we were protesting outside the Capitol on January 2nd and 3rd of 2021, when the House was taking a vote on whether or not they'd make Pelosi speaker, Noam Chomsky told all of us that we're like spoiled children asking for cookies when we know we've done something wrong. So it's exposed a lot of people. And frankly, I'm very pleased to see what's come out of this all, but I am even more interested in what is remaining in the extra 2 million files that are still somewhere collecting dust on Pam Bondi and Kosh Patel's desk.
Yeah, you and me both. Lastly, though it's a big question, Jackson, you mentioned the negotiations, and you mentioned Witkoff. Witkoff is deeply involved. Him and Kushner, highly qualified, of course, as real estate men. In diplomacy. They are the key negotiators on two fronts, on the Russian front and on the Iranian front. Now, we know that they are lying on a Goebbelian scale in relation to Iran. Witkoff himself, just today, said that Iran is 1 week away from developing a nuclear weapon. Not 8 days, not 6, 1 week away. This is a fantastic lie. So why should we believe that Witkoff is telling the truth to President Putin? How can we trust Kushner and Witkoff on Russia when we know what they're doing on Iran?
Well, the good news is, I guess it doesn't really matter to either of us because there are very fine leaders in both these countries who I think understand the BS that's being peddled in their direction. And, you know, the Russian negotiations, as you know, have been they've been very quiet. It's been a key demand of the Russians from every facet of the Russian government that these negotiations, and specifically what was discussed in Alaska, need to be kept quiet for them to have any chances of, being successful. That being said, I don't really necessarily believe that the Russians and the Iranians, and this is just my opinion, I'm not speaking with any knowledge of the situation, but I don't think that they really care all that much whether these are successful negotiations. The Russians are moving forward on all, sections of the front line. They're doing very well. The Americans want to offer a bunch of slop at the Russian doorstep and think that for some reason they are in dire need of making a concession or many concessions to the United States. Same with the Iranians. Why should Iran, after they exhibited their extremely impressive and unexpected for many strength in Operation True Promise 2 and the 12-day war, why should they accept any more concessions, specifically a deal that would be worse than the JCPOA? The JCPOA was terrible for Iran. Why now should they accept something even worse? It makes no sense to me. I think the Russians, they're approaching this as very pragmatic people, and maybe there's good things they can take out of this and some bad things that they don't like about it. The Iranians, I think that they're just buying time as they solidify all their nuclear sites and air defense systems. And I think they're very smart to do it. Unfortunately, I think that maybe the U.S. is beginning to realize that They're not fooling anyone this time around, and it's time to start the war. I think we're about to see it.